Hey there. I'm Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports App College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds and leaky black. Matt Norlander's here with me. Look at him. He's right there still inside the Alamo Dome. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to that like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball channel, shame on you. You should have done that already.
Now.
Let's get into it. We're obviously going to talk both national semifinals, but we're going to start with the second one because it was an instant classic and a game that will be talked about for many years to come. Final score, Houston 70, Duke 67. The Blue Devils were up 14 points with 8:03 to play, up 9 with 2:06 to play, up 6 with 34 seconds remaining, and still lost the game. Outscored 25-8 in the final 8:02, outscored 9-0 in the final 33 seconds. Norlander, good to see you. How wild was that?
Well, GP, it's great to see you. We're coming live. For anyone listening after the fact in the morning, we appreciate you. It is 1:03 local time as we're live here. GP just did stuff on set. I did some HQ. I'm still going to finish this column here. But this is why I love doing this show. It's why I love covering this tournament. I'm still truly trying to process what I just saw there right here in front of me on this court. It's just there. Houston's ability to refuse to die is not something that's new. This has been a fundamental feature of this program for years and years and years. It really has. Doesn't mean that Houston can't be beat. It can. But if you're going to beat Houston, you're going to lose some vital organs along the way. And most of the time, you're just not going to do it. You're not going to be able to beat this team. And what they were able to do here and just rip the life out of Duke, a Duke team that, GP, I'm going to give you the vibe in the building as I'm sitting here on press row when it went down. You know, Duke, the Duke side was over there. Houston was here. On a personal note, I talked to Jim Nantz a little bit before the game. Said hello at halftime. Matt, what are you thinking? Well, Jim, it's good that it's 6 instead of 10 right now. He still had a belief, and sure enough, as the clock was ticking down, we locked out. It's not as romantic as I'm about to make it sound, but we literally
it sounds really romantic.
Literally locked eyes, and the joy in this man's face. Really, really happy for Jim. I know he got plenty of camera time, but I'm just telling you, before we got to that moment, this building was prepared for what seemed inevitable. It just felt like Duke was going to eke out this game, figure out a way. Flag hit a 3 on that side of the floor that felt like 4 when it went in. We had the block on this side of the floor. It just seemed like they were going to have just enough. Like Houston's still tugging the rope, and they're still tugging the rope, and it's just Duke's going to be able to make this happen. Proctor doesn't make the foul shot. Obviously, you've got just stones free throws from Juwan Roberts. You had the JoJo Tugler play, which was the technical. I'm not gonna call it the most unlikely comeback ever because statistically it's not. GP, I'm just telling you, I just don't ever think that I've been in a building where the feeling of which team was going to win the game more violently swung in a shorter period of time on the game clock than this one. And there's a lot of reasons why it happened, but I do think, and this is going to be part of what I write here, so I'm still even like building out the column, and who even knows how the hell this thing's going to read. The things that gave us concern, and if you want to even use that word, or just reason to speculate on Duke's national championship prospects back in October and November. Duke was not the preseason number 1 team or 2 team or 3 team, was that they had a hell of a lot of talent, but they had a lot of young guys. They didn't have a lot of collective experience playing together, and they lacked that year-over-year continuity in ways that Houston really exposed. Houston was not as talented as Duke, but it was a whole hell of a lot older. They had a whole hell of a lot of guys that have been here for multiple years. I have a line in my story from Kellen Sampson who told me before the game, we can't match Duke in talent, but we can match them in length, and damn did that wind up being a huge factor in the final few minutes. This was a stunner. You got to have 2 to tango. It was just as much of a Duke collapse as it was a Houston comeback. I remain astounded and impressed by Kelvin Sampson's team's ability to just refuse to die. Parrish, I've never seen anything like it with a college team like this. It's just year over year, and they dragged them into the pit of hell and said, we're not dying. It's not going to be us. You're going to lose this game. Sure enough, they did it. I want your thoughts and how you took in this game and what it felt like. Obviously, you did the show on CBS Sports Network removed from the arena. So what did it feel like to intake this from the broadcast end of it? Because sometimes those can be slightly different feelings versus being inside the building.
It was a weird game because, just for transparency, we've got a green room and a convention center right outside of our set, and we all gather in there and watch the game together. And so we're all watching this game, and I know it ultimately got to a point where it looked like the old veteran, tough, physical team took advantage of the young guys, but it didn't look that way for like 32 minutes. For about 32 minutes of this game, it looked like Duke was just, well, one team's got pros and the other team doesn't. Every time Houston got a bucket to make it feel like, okay, here, maybe they're getting back in it, Cooper Flag 3, Conca 3. It was just like, boom, let's kick it right back up to 8 or 9, get comfortable again. And it just sort of felt like Houston is awesome. Houston is tough. Houston could probably beat any other team in the country, but I don't know if they're going to be able to get this done. And then it's like, okay, now it's within reach. Okay, whoa, it's really in reach. And then it just, like, it really went from even with 2 minutes to go, this is still fine for Duke, to what just happened. And in that way, it did feel a little like Kansas-Memphis in the same building back in 2008.
Great call.
Except that the Kansas-Memphis thing, that collapse happened really over just a span of a couple of minutes at the end. This was building toward it for 8 minutes, and then it just splashed. And I don't want to say that I've never seen anything like it, because as you know, I don't even remember all the things that I've seen. But that felt like, I'll just revert back to what I said earlier. It felt like this is a game we're going to remember forever. The next time Duke is in a big spot, we'll reference back to it. Jon Scheyer, until Jon Scheyer breaks through and wins a national championship, he will have to talk about this game forever because, and then I'll give it back to you, like I said tonight on CBS Sports Network, this is not the NFL. This is not the NBA. You don't get to just run it back. Like, how many times, because it's well documented now that John, leaned on Brad Stevens a little bit in terms of roster building philosophy. And the interesting thing I gather from that is, like, Brad Stevens was coaching a team, running a team. How many times did they not get where they were trying to get with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum? Like, a bunch. You could count it when you're, wake up tomorrow. But eventually you just keep running it back. It's like, we got our core. These are our guys. We're going to try it again, and eventually it happens. You don't get that in college basketball. Hardly ever, and definitely not anymore, with few exceptions. Jon Scheyer knows, and you can see it on his face, hear it in his voice when he was talking to Tracy Wolfson afterward. He had one shot with this team, and I'll put it as simple as this. He had the best team in the country, according to the predictive metrics, one of the best teams in the past 3 decades, according to KenPom, the best player in the country, and you're up 14 with a little more than 8 to go and 9 with a little more than 2 to go. You have got to win that game. You've got to close that out, and when you don't, it hurts, and you will carry that around forever.
Here's a couple quotes from Jon Scheyer. Quote, "It was just a matter of our guys. They didn't want to lose. And the key thing in those games is playing not to lose, but instead playing to win. I mean, shoot, these games are as tough as can be. But, yeah, it's just something where in those moments you have to double down on who you are, have to have that leadership on the court, have to have that toughness to get a stop. Because we had a couple plays that were 4 or 5 point swings. Those swings can seem small in one play. I'm continuing Scheyer here. But you do a few of them, and it changes the complexion of the game. And then they're playing with free money. You give them credit, but they're playing with free money. You know what that is? It's a quote I haven't used all season. It's what Jon Scheyer told me when I sat down with him in October when he talked about playing NC State and losing last year in the Elite Eight. And it applies what happened here tonight against Houston. Different team, different situation. The bittersweet thing, if you want to call it that, about Duke is that Sheyer's gotten better with each passing year. The team is going deeper into the tournament, and the way that Duke is getting knocked out of this field is getting more excruciating with each passing year. If the pattern continues a year from now, I don't even want to imagine how Duke would lose in a national championship game in that scenario. But they've progressively gotten deeper in the bracket, and the losses have been even worse. And by the way, for folks watching live or listening, we are going to have another podcast on Sunday to preview all the title game stuff. So this is very much react and respond to what happened in front of us here. It's more looking back and doing all that. The preview stuff is going to wait for the Sunday show. Let's continue on Duke before getting a little Houston. Obviously, we're going to give the Gators plenty of love. Cooper Flag had a tremendous game. Let me toss it back to you real quick. Personally, now, I didn't love the play for his shot, but asked Sion James in the locker room after, said 100 times out of 100 we want the ball in his hands with that shot, more than okay with it. I wasn't at the press conference, but I think they were mostly okay with it. Wasn't a miserable design or anything like that. I just wasn't expecting Flag to quasi settle for what a 15-foot fadeaway jumper with Roberts having his hand in his face. So before we go a little bit more on Duke here, any issues with the play or even beyond that, GP, were you expecting that kind of action, that kind of set, that kind of look in that huge spot when obviously Duke needed the bucket to get a chance to win?
Well, I don't like anything that's going to get you in a situation. Cooper Flag and Juwan Roberts is there to be able to contest at 15 feet. Like, if that's, I don't want that. This is the best basketball player in college. There are times, you'll know what I mean. There are times when a ball comes out of somebody's hand and you're like, okay, that's it. That's the shot. That's what they want. And when it came out of his hand, I was like, who knows if it'll go in or not? But I was like, I don't like that shot. Keep in mind though, and early in the season when there were some Cooper Flag skeptics that existed, it was late game stuff that, he fell down a couple of times or whatever. He would dribble a little too much. And here he was in a situation, and it's easy to point to as a bad shot or not a great shot or whatever, but think about it from this perspective. He was an 18-year-old literally playing against 22-year-olds and the best defensive team in college basketball. Like, I never thought he was going to get a great shot, if I'm being honest. I didn't think he was going to get a great shot. I thought he was going to have to make an incredible play, and he's capable of it, but he didn't do it there.
He didn't do it there. It's not all on him. In fact, he had himself a really nice game. Again, let's keep it more Duke, and then we'll get Houston love. Up and down the Duke situation. Flag, incredible, 27 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Actually became the first player ever in a Final Four to lead his team in all categories, because he also had 3 blocks and 2 steals. There had never been a player in a Final Four game that led or co-led in all 5 categories. He did that in this game. The over the back from my angle, actually,
I did not like that.
So how about this? So, and if you can't really see if you're watching it, you listen, let alone, but my angle here, like I've got it right on a 45 degree. I actually, in real time, it looked like a good call from my angle. But then when I went back and watched, I didn't love it. I don't think it was egregious, but it sounds like you thought it should have been a play on.
I would have let it play on. I would not have. If you put, I'm not an official, obviously. I'm only a doctor, not an official.
Correct.
But I would not blow the whistle there. I'd let that play. I don't want to blow the whistle there.
Okay, fair enough. And even if they don't blow the whistle, no guarantee that Duke wins. But obviously that foul, there were just 6, 7, 8, 9 things that were going Houston's way. Go on down the list with the team. Proctor misses the foul shot. We go back to the stuff in the early part of the season. All right, can Proctor be that guy? 7 points, 2 of 8 from the field, and boy, oh boy, missed the front end of a 1-and-1. That was big. Knipple, I thought for the most part was pretty solid overall. He had bigger moments in the first half than the second half. Kaman Malawat playing 21 minutes. It was a no-show, and I will give the idea that Houston could keep a 7'2" dude who had been wreaking terror more often than not. 0 rebounds. Zero rebounds. Him and then Sion James didn't have a great game. I didn't even love the maybe they were trying to avoid getting fouled, but they had 3.7 on the clock, and even the play here, he's throwing it, and it was like throwing chum for the Sharks. Houston gets the tip, Duke doesn't even get an opportunity there. It is fair, and I did watch Shire's interview with Tracy, GP. It is fair to criticize him for how he mishandled this down the stretch. Kelvin, now some of it was pure vintage Houston grit and gumption. I get that, but to me it felt like Kelvin outcoached Shire down the stretch, and they got tight. And there's a few stats here that they might refresh overnight, but I believe now Duke was 2-4 this season. Games decided. Maybe you even talked about this on the postgame show, GP. I think 2-4 in games decided by 7 points or fewer this season. Duke was now 1-4. Let's see, when it played a top 20 defense. Something like that, or 1-3 now, 1-3. Houston, meantime, is now 9-2 against top 20 defenses this season. It absolutely felt to me. Now, the players got asked this, the ones that were in the locker room. Duke kind of kept Kahn and Cooper, kept them sequestered from any more questioning in the locker room afterward, because they kind of bled the clock there, so we didn't get more from them on this specifically. But to me, it felt like Houstonness, if you get what I'm saying, and Duke's lack of consistently playing teams at this level in tight games, I actually think it mattered, and I think it affected some of what Shire was doing from an approach there. What are your thoughts?
I think it mattered, and Kelvin Sampson, in his own words, addressed it afterwards. He was talking to Tracy Wolfson. I'm not sure if you saw that, but
I did not.
Okay, so it was great. Kelvin said, listen, we were never down 20, and we weren't even playing well. So I'm just telling my team, like, we've been here before. We're not even playing well, and we're not down 20. And if we can get this to a point, we're not there yet, but if we can get it to a point, we can put game pressure on them. And that's where he stopped his sentence, his thought, but I'll continue it. What I took from that is, and I don't think they can handle it, or at least I think they might not be able to handle it. They're younger than us, and they haven't been through this stuff like we have. And if we put them in a situation where they feel like they are on the verge of maybe a collapse, they might just collapse. And there was a moment, and I'm not trying to get into anybody's head, but it felt like with a little more than 2 to go, they were trying to run the clock out. It felt like they were just trying to get it to zeros. And because there was a moment, it was me and Britt Stover and John Rothstein sitting together, and Duke got up pretty good to the point where I actually said this out loud. Do you think Duke could win this game without scoring another point? Like, are we there right now? Can Duke win this game without scoring another point? And then they end up losing the game by 3 in regulation after scoring more points. It was an awesome comeback, but aided by, I've always believed this, whether it's Memphis, Kansas in 08 or tonight. You can't have these types of comebacks without it also being a collapse on some level. The other team's got to contribute to it in some level, and Duke contributed to it on some level. And you heard John in his post game. I thought he was really good. I thought he was really good. I thought he handled it beautiful. I thought he handled it as well as you can handle it as a young head coach who has been just eliminated from the NCAA tournament in horrific ways in back-to-back years. I thought he handled it well. But among the things he said to Tracy was, I don't think I helped my guys enough down the stretch. And I bet he feels that right now. And if you're looking for a bright spot, I think this is it. And I said this on TV tonight. We just watched John Shire do a really tough interview with Tracy Wolfson. You could see it in his face. You could hear it in his voice. He will talk to her again at the Final Four. I promise you. And they're going to have a happy conversation at the Final Four someday. I would bet a lot of money on it, but it didn't happen on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's good perspective. Yeah, I mean, John really does carry the job very well and does a good job with it. And I think he would be willing to admit that there were some misfires there. It's funny you mentioned about that on the Duke end. Now, having seen how this game played out, there were just a couple of possessions here. I specifically remember one where Sharp was coming up the floor. I want to say there was like a minute 15 left, and they're down 7 at this point. And I'm thinking, it's not over, but like, let's go. Like, right. let's play with some urgency. Right. And they had it. So let's transition, I guess, to Houston here and try and keep the show moving so we don't run too late. The boys got to still file a column over here. Just a few things on the Houston side. The fact that I'll just kind of roll them off and you take it where you want. The fact that they still won the game despite the super weird technical, rightfully called, against Tugler was crazy. The fact that you've got the second most popular podcast, not as popular as ours, trying to distract me while I'm doing the show here. They're done. See you later, number 2. Thank you.
Yeah, tell them. Ask them when they're getting a billboard in Times Square.
That's great. Yeah, GP wants to know when you're getting a billboard in Times Square. That's what I thought. Okay, thank you. So, so then we get Tugler, we get Cryer with 26, and he was phenomenal. In fact, he had a couple of bad plays all night, and he was incredible. And
hey, Rob Doster,
he can't hear you, bud. And
that's like my favorite. Or my, it's one of my. That's like one of my. Oh, look who it is!
Yeah, it's Parrish.
Yeah, it's
hey Gary.
Yeah, it's a live show.
What's up with you? How are you?
You've done this before.
Yeah, I did it on his show once before, so he's getting me back there. It's live podcasting. It's okay. It's okay. So you had Cryer, who was 26 and incredible, and it gets a little bit overlooked in some of this to a certain extent. But Roberts to hit the foul shots in that spot was massive. And then he gets the hand up on flag. Sharp had some huge buckets down the stretch. This is just one of the more impressive wins on a Final Four stage that I can ever remember. Ever.
It was awesome. And I don't say that. Sometimes people get real weird when we talk about, oh, he thought Houston coming back was awesome. He must hate Duke. I mean, just stop it with all that stuff. Here's the truth. I have known Kelvin Sampson for a long time, and I have known John Shire for a long time, and I like both of them immensely. And as happy as I am for Kelvin, like, I don't want to get hyperbolic here, but, like, I feel sick for John. Absolutely sick. You only get one shot at this with this team, and he was in a position to win the whole thing, and he left you hanging. He left you hanging.
Fanta left me hanging. Fanta. It's all right. There we go, bud.
I got you.
Appreciate
What's
you.
up, GP?
He says,
Hi, John Fanta. That's the legend, John Fanta.
GP says that. This is about as live podcasting as it gets, by the way. So it's all
right. Had a nice night with Matt Norlander and John Fanta and my beautiful mother at Lionel Richie.
That is correct. We don't even have time to get into that, but that completely happened. Will Forte and I might be friends now, but let's keep it moving.
Okay, so it was awesome to see Houston do what it did, to do it 3 hours away from its campus, to see Kelvin have that moment standing on the scores table, dancing in the locker room, and I love that they did it the way they did it, because there was a moment with maybe about a minute left where they're down, I guess it's 6 at that point.
Yeah.
And
I think 6.
And I think a lot of coaches would have fouled there to try to stop the clock and extend the game. And he played it out. And they got to stop, and then they come down, and I think they bang. It looked like a very questionable decision in the moment to let it play out, as opposed to, you might want to get a foul here, stop the clock. But he knows his team. He knows his team. He knows his team better than all of us watching. He knows what they're capable of. He trusts them to go he trusts them to go win the game. We don't have to extend this. We can get this done right here. He trusted his team to make big plays, and there's a big shot from Sharp. There's the missed 3, and then the putback dunk from Joe. It was just an awesome, awesome display. And now you watch this, and I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I don't know that if most people understand this. The national championship game is about 50 times easier to get into than the national semifinals, because you have 2 fan bases that want to go instead of 4. And whenever you get one fan base close to the location, here's what's going to happen on Monday night. Here's what's happened tonight, and here's what's going to happen tomorrow. A bunch of Auburn fans and a bunch of Duke fans are going to throw Final Four tickets on StubHub and SeatGeek and wherever else you can put them. And guess who's going to eat them up? Houston fans. And they're going to make that drive over on Monday afternoon, and that place is going to be a real home court advantage for the Cougars on Monday night, I assume. And it's just sort of interesting because they had to play the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in Indianapolis, where they were at a disadvantage from a crowd perspective. And now, one win away from a national title, they're going to have the biggest crowd on Monday night.
All right. You're right. And we'll talk more about that on Sunday. I think the single craziest stat thing about this game to me is this. Duke is going to wind up with the most efficient offense in a single season in KenPom history. It's going to beat the Wisconsin 2015 team that also did not win a national championship. So you're talking about a team that, within the context of the season, was better at scoring than any other team in any other context of any other season. Duke had 2 baskets in the final 12-plus minutes. It only had, I think it had flag hit one with like 10:31 to go, and they only had 1 field goal after that. And Houston shut them down. It's unreal what Houston did to turn off Duke's water and win this game. That's the biggest among 3 dozen takeaways. It's the fact that they were able to do that and really shrink Duke down to a size it didn't even know, and to expose its inexperience, and to make Duke playoff balance for more than 25% of the game in a way they just had not felt the entire season. Nothing like this Houston team, man. Super, super, super impressive. It's a tough end for Duke. You got to figure that starting 5 is all done at the school. They rebuild, they start over, but Shire's still going to be there. He's the one that's going to carry this with him next season and beyond. And yes, the nature of this loss will stick with him until, at minimum, he finds himself coaching on a Monday night in April.
I know the final minute of a game is wildly different than the opening minute or even the opening 8 minutes of a game, but I did like what I'm about to tell you is true. It took Houston 8 minutes and 9 seconds to score 9 points in this game to get to 9. It was 11:51 when they got to 9. And then in the final minute, they scored 9 points in the final 33 seconds.
I love that stat. Hold on. Literally say that for me again, because I'm putting it in the column.
Okay, it is. And you don't credit. Don't screw your column up with I credit, I own. Just keep it yourself.
Got it.
It took them 8 minutes and 9 seconds to get to 9 points in the game. And then they scored 9 in the final 33 to complete a 9-0 run to win the game in regulation.
That's just
that's what they call a nugget.
That's a hell of a nugget. That's a hell of a nugget right there. And that's how you move on to Monday night, man. Just awesome stuff. You want to talk Gators?
Yeah, let's get to the other national semifinal. We'll do that next. First, though, let's get a word from our partners. Final score, Florida 79, Auburn 73. Guess who was the star? Yep, Walter Clayton Jr. Took 18 shots, made 11 of them, finished with 34 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists in 35 minutes. As you know by now, probably, he got 30 in an Elite Eight win over Texas, which means Walter Clayton Jr., a 0-star recruit coming out of high school who started his college career at Iona, is now the first player to score at least 30 points in back-to-back Elite Eight games and a national semifinal since a fella named Larry Bird did it back in 1979. So Florida is in the national title game for the third time this century. The previous 3 trips belonged to Billy Donovan. This one belongs to Todd Golden. Norlander, please provide your thoughts on Florida over Auburn, because in some ways that was also a come-from-behind victory.
It was a come-from-behind victory. It was the first time this season Auburn led by 5+ points at halftime and blew the game. They had been up by 5 or more at halftime 25 times before this season. They had won all of those games. Florida had not been faced with a halftime deficit in more than a month. It comes back, it gets it done. Pretty interesting people that were in the house to watch Walter Clayton do his thing tonight. One, Rick Pitino. I got a quote from him that's in my column that honestly feels like it was filed 7 hours ago at this point. Obviously, Pitino coached him at Iona. Also in the building tonight, Billy Donovan. And the last time Florida got to a national title game, Billy Donovan was the coach, so that is fitting. Honored with the Hall of Fame. Also honored with the Hall of Fame, Carmelo Anthony. How does he play into this? Tonight, Walter Clayton Jr. became the first player to get at least 30 in a semifinal, a national semifinal, since none other than Carmelo Anthony. And this might be the first semifinal that Carmelo has been in the building for since he played for Syracuse. So that's kind of a wild coincidence there. How about the fact that Cooper Flagg and Johni Broome were the National Player of the Year race for 5 months? Neither of them makes the title game, but the clear-cut third best player in the country is going to play on Monday night. That's kind of cool for him. And he's been tremendous. He's also one of only 5 players to ever go for 30 in back-to-back games this deep into the tournament, joining Bird, but also like Wilt Chamberlain's on that list. Jerry West is on that list. Like it's ridiculous what he was able to do. And, you know, the column that I wrote in part was about, hey, listen, for the entire season, it was a 2-man race, and fairly so. But Clayton, by nature of doing what he's done here, has put his name, if not entirely on the level, like in that same grouping. He was a unanimous first-team All-American here at CBS Sports, and what he did and how he took over 20 points in the second half. We'll get to Auburn in just a second. Mighty impressive. It wasn't all him. I think Elijah Martin might have tilted the axis of the planet with his dunk in the second half, which was the dunk of the season as far as I'm concerned. And we've had some awesome ones. Grant Nelson, I see you. I know. But that was incredible. And that came after he skied for one, 4 or 5 minutes in real time before that. Mighty impressive, by the way. So I'm sitting here at my press seat, and I have picked against Florida in the Sweet 16. I had Maryland. I picked against them in the Elite Eight. I had Texas Tech. And I picked against them here. I had Auburn. And so I interviewed Golden on HQ after, and he said this on HQ, which is true. I had not revealed this because it wasn't mine. He has texted me the screen grab of Florida's final scores after these and one of them has come within I think it was the Texas Tech one. Like it must have come within 2 minutes of him finishing his press conference. So he does the interview right here, and I'm like typing, and I'm right here, and I hear Norlander, pick against us again. You better be picking against. He's screaming it at me, to the point where I thought it was going to be picked up on the broadcast here. Later, fellas. Field 68 crews out of here. And it was
how many of them are there? Jesus Lord.
I know we run a 3-man. They've got a militia over there.
What?
What do you want from me?
People?
I know. But it was.
You ever imagine me trying to talk with that many people? I go crazy.
Forget about it. So Todd Golden, I mean, GP, when I tell you he was yelling it at me, like in a good-natured way, but like I'm sitting right, like I'm right. You can't really tell, but like I'm right next to. That's Iron Eagle. Great, that's their spot right there. So I'm right next to the broadcast crew. So I'm right here, and he's screaming at me. And I'm like, I'll pick a. We'll preview tomorrow. Yeah. I'm going to abide by his wishes. I'm picking Houston to beat Florida. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it again, and I will have to eat it. But I thought Tony Bennett practically running me over in the Elite Eight to get to his father was the weirdest thing that ever happened to me on the court, technically at a game. Golden just screaming at the top of his lungs for me to pick against him again. And there's like so many people around when he's doing this. It was just, he was unhinged in a good way. And then he was a good sport to come on HQ afterward. But congrats to Florida, the Gators fans, for getting here. You were the 4th 1 seed overall. From a resume standpoint, you had a very compelling case to be even higher. Whatever. You had the toughest region. You got through it. Clayton's incredible. Elijah Martin has a chance to win a national championship after missing that chance at FAU. Again, we'll get to Auburn in just a second, but I was in awe of how they were able to change everything and shut down Broome entirely, who was clearly bothered. Clearly an issue and restricted him and held him back. And then Florida's bigs got their act together and they took it away. So it's your turn to talk here. Your thoughts on what went down in the early tip.
First, I just love that story about Todd. I like him having fun with this. I like him texting you that stuff. I much prefer it to the coaches who say, I didn't see anything. I didn't read anything. I didn't hear that. I don't know. Every one of these, not every one of these guys, there are guys who really don't hear and see anything. But most of them, when you hear them say that, they're not telling the truth. And I like that Todd's like, I'm watching you guys pick against me all the time. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. We'll keep making you look wrong. All right. I love it. Fans do the same thing too. And it's fine. Like, whatever. I can ignore that just like I can ignore anything else. But I think sometimes fans read way more into it than there is. It's like, oh, you picked against Florida again. Yeah, there's 2 teams in front of me. I picked the wrong one. Most people aren't great at picking games. Trust me, if I ever got great at picking games, I would quit podcasting in the middle of the night and just bet all day long, and we'd be great. You just pick a win. Hey, there's 2 teams, pick one. Okay. And then sometimes you're wrong. It doesn't mean you don't think Florida's awesome. Florida is I think like 17-1 in their past 18 games now.
Yes.
11 game winning streak.
Yes.
Coming out of the toughest conference in the history of college basketball. Anybody trying to tell you Florida isn't anything but awesome is crazy. They're awesome. I've said it all week long. There is no combination of outcomes that would be surprising to me. Any of these 4 teams were capable of winning the national championship, Florida included. And if you say that about Florida, you are publicly acknowledging you think they can beat Auburn and whoever else they have to play on Monday night. So Florida is awesome, but anytime you are presented with the game, you have to pick it. And, somebody's always going to be on the wrong side of that. And what I've learned is that fans tend to focus on exactly what Florida fans are focusing on right now. I would just say, please don't take it personally. Your team is awesome, but Norlander's already picked Houston on Monday night, and if you want a spoiler alert, I probably will too.
Okay, fair enough. But you have time to change it. I took Houston on selection Sunday night, and I'm not gonna swap from that. So we'll see if it comes to be. Before we get to Auburn, Clayton's performance to me, and it's way too late. I know you haven't thought about it, but it ranks in the past 15 to 20 years. It ranks on a short-ish list. I'm not going to say that's like 3 names deep or 5 names deep, but what he did here to beat a 1 seed, down 8 at the break, and to lift this team, it was mostly him. Elijah Martin had 17. Thomas Houck had a couple of really good plays. He had a sick block. He had finished with 12 and 7 boards. Like, Houck had himself a night. Chinelu and Will Richard were not especially loud overall, though Chinelu was good on the boards there. But the Clayton thing was really cool for him. An example, and there's plenty of them, I get all that, but whereas on the Houston side, yeah, you've got a couple transfers, but a lot of it's homegrown, so to speak. Clayton comes by way of Iona, and he was on the team that got knocked out of the tournament by UConn a couple years ago. And I remember hearing about just like how he in that moment, like he still didn't feel like he was enough, like he had just been as good as he needed to be. And for him now to get this attached to his reputation forever, no matter what happens on Monday night, is a pretty awesome thing. I mean, he is a stud, and he just hits so many tough shots. It's just not how he scores or that he scores. It is how he does it. And he just has a knack for hitting big bucket after big bucket. So I was really impressed by him. I'm sure you agree. Let's talk Auburn.
Yeah. Well, let me just say one thing on that.
Go ahead.
And I'll be real quick. What it reminded me of, and let me start by saying I am not comparing these two players in any way other than in the way I'm specifically doing it. You know what it reminded me of? 2008, Steph Curry bombs on Georgetown, ends the great Roy Hibbert's college career. And then you get this whole week of a buildup of like, my God, Steph Curry, incredible shot maker. Oh, wow. Did you see that? Let's talk about this guy. Why haven't we been talking about this guy nonstop all season long? And there's a big buildup to this moment. And then Wisconsin, he delivered again. Just did it again. Wow. No letdown. Just go. That different places in the bracket, but the same kind of thing. Walter Clayton didn't really become Walter Clayton, third best player in the sport, until about a week and a half ago. You know, it took a while till that was a consensus opinion. And you get all of this attention, more attention than you've ever received in your whole life. How are you going to respond? Can you do it again? Buddy, he delivered even better. He was awesome. And I was about to say something stupid, so I'll just stop. I was about to say, if you're wondering how Florida has a chance, period. All right, period. Yeah. Walter Clayton does not have to be a superstar for Florida to have a chance against Houston. But what gives them the best chance is they got a guy who can take tough shots and make them. And you know, he's been incredible. He's having an all-time run by a guard in this NCAA tournament, and particularly when you bring up the context of his college career, where he started, where he was coming out of high school. This is pretty remarkable stuff.
Auburn Tigers finished the season 32-6. This was a team that was at one point 27-2, went on to go 5-4 down the stretch over the final 9 games. And so the stat we mentioned on Selection Sunday remains true. There still has never been a team to lose at least 3 of its final 4 games heading into the tournament and go on to win the NCAA championship. Auburn had lost 3 of 4 heading into Selection Sunday. Small picture, big picture, GP, right back to you. What do you make of what you saw from Auburn on Saturday night? And what do you make of the Tigers overall this season? This was a team that through the first 3 months was pretty definitively the best team in college basketball. It gets a 1 seed, it makes a Final Four, but it gives up a lead at halftime and winds up losing 79-73.
I think they had a great season, and then I think their best player got hurt. I think that's what happened. I think they had a great season, and their best player got hurt. And I know they lost 3 of 4 heading into the NCAA tournament, but as we've talked about a million times, I think that was more than anything a byproduct of they took their foot off the gas. They wrapped up everything they needed to wrap up. Everybody was telling them they've wrapped up everything they needed to wrap up. They were already outright SEC champs, already in a position to get the number 1 overall seed. I think they took their foot off the gas, and then they had to go to Texas A&M, and they got popped. And then they had to come home and play Alabama, and then they got in overtime. And then they had to go play Tennessee, and they played 4 good teams, really, when you count Ole Miss. And they took their foot off the gas, and just doing that a little bit in that league was enough to make you start losing games. But let's not ever forget, they did bounce back and beat Creighton, and then beat the Big Ten tournament champs, and then beat the outright Big Ten champs. And while they were beating the outright Big Ten champs, Johni Broome had an elbow injury. And they talked all week about how he's fine and he's good, and he wasn't. He just wasn't. He got tired, and he didn't look comfortable. There was, I think, the Elijah Martin dunk. That was a loose ball situation.
Yes.
And he looked slow to get there.
Yes.
And uncomfortable reaching for it. And it led to a transition dunk. And that was a moment, and not the first, that was like maybe the last, but it was a moment where it was like, he's not okay. He's not okay. He got worn down, and he was never comfortable. And he did pretty much nothing in the second half.
Yeah, he finished with 15 points, 6 of 14 from the field, had 7 rebounds. I mean, he had a couple of his, he had a certain style about him, like a certain rhythm, and he had a couple of those kind of signature Broome buckets. But I was on it was on this end in the first half. I want to say it was in the first 4 minutes. He took a weird, an aggressive cut. It might have been Hauk, and he grimaced immediately.
Right.
And I was like, oh, just like that quickly. It was a problem. Even if he was fully healthy, it's conceivable Florida would have still won for sure. I want to give the Gators credit for that. Chad Baker-Mazzaro finishes with 18. He had 4 triples, had himself a nice game. Miles Kelly had a couple of good buckets. Overall, Florida was able to peel off another big run. This is a team that has been now against UConn, against Texas Tech, and against Auburn. It has, lived with a little more drama than other teams, and nothing wrong with that. Houston had its fair doses of drama tonight as well, but Auburn needed Broome at 100% or pretty close to it, and frankly, I don't think he was even above 75% in this game. They did downplay it going into the week. I understand why they did that. Hell, they might have been hopeful that he was going to put on a Superman-level performance. That was just not going to happen at all. He was shut down, and the fact that he was ineffective in the second half really spelled doom for Auburn more than anything else. They had a couple of moments where it's like, okay, maybe they've got a chance, the right bucket here. But frankly, there was just Clayton got him time and time again. Then, as I mentioned before, Hauk had a couple of good plays. But Auburn fans, one hell of a season. You've seen your program make the Final Four 2 times since 2019, thanks to Bruce Pearl. I know you get to the stage, you get even hungrier to finally, win a national championship. Hell, maybe that could still happen under Pearl. But big picture, yeah, this is bitter. Maybe there's some tiny bit of solace. Like if you're gonna get knocked out, it's against a fellow SEC team. We'll see if they can go out and finish the job for the conference on Monday night or not. But overall, yeah, Auburn was a team that showed us its best in the first 2-3 months of the season, and it would look good in the tournament up until now. Don't get me wrong, but ultimately, everyone but one's got to go down, and to be one of the last 4 standing in an all-4 1-seed Final Four, something to be proud of. And frankly, I don't look at it this way, but you and I both know this is the case. Like Auburn had the earlier game. It's not Duke. Duke lost in dramatic fashion, and from a broad coverage perspective, Auburn's, and nor should it, it's just going to take no slack for losing this game. Like all the attention is going to be how Houston pulled it off and how Duke blew it. Auburn's going to be, they had an awesome season. They won the SEC. They were a 1 seed, and they lost to Florida in a competitive game, and that's it. So there's no egg on the collective face of Tiger Nation, so to speak, in my opinion.
Not at all, because and you had it right earlier when you said even if Johni Broome's healthy, Florida could have beaten them. I mean, Johni Broome was healthy in February, and Florida beat them.
Yeah,
so, of course, but if you're Bruce Pearl or Johni Broome or anybody connected to that Auburn program, whether it's true or not, you can always say to yourself, man, if Johni didn't hurt his elbow, we'd have been fine. Man, we just got bad luck. Oh, that was so unfortunate. You always got that to make you feel better. The Duke doesn't have that. Duke is just like, man, we were up 9 points with 2 minutes to go, and it got away from us. So absolutely, I promise you, neither Jon Scheyer nor Bruce Pearl are happy tonight, but one of them is wearing this in an entirely different way than the other one, I would assume.
I agree with you entirely. Okay, do we have one more segment before we get out of here, by the way?
One more segment to go. It's going to be a shorter than normal version of the Final 4 and 1, and I mean about the shortest version of a Final 4 and 1 you can do. It's going to be one game. We'll do it next. First, it's going to work from our partners.
One of golf's elite courses, Quail Hollow, hosts the game's top players at the PGA Championship this May on CBS.
It's the Final 4 and 1 presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. You know what, Norlander? Let's do this. Let's pick the title game of the women's NCAA tournament because it should be a classic. Awesome on paper. UConn against South Carolina inside Dwight Gooden Arena in Tampa, Florida. UConn minus 6.5. How you going to act?
I think this is a pod first, but I'm, man. Well, I hope to be watching this game with you. Our great, amazing colleague Dennis Dodd is retiring after this Final Four. We're going to go out to dinner with him on Sunday, and I guess this game is going to be played earlier in the afternoon. Yeah. So I don't know how this is going to work out now that I'm saying this out loud. I haven't begun to figure out the Sunday plans.
Let me help everybody here. Tip is at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, because they put on ABC, right? They put it on network that way.
Yeah, it's on ABC,
Okay.
2 o'clock Central. So I will be doing a television show.
And I will be back here for media availability. Yes.
All right. So the truth is, neither one of us are probably going to watch this, but we would like to. We just have to work.
I can catch some of it. Listen, you're not. So what was the number?
UConn minus 6.5.
And that's a big number. I know where I live. Okay. I'm not picking against Gino Auriemma and the Huskies. 6.5 is big, though. So how about this? I will go UConn to win, but Dawn Staley and her Gamecocks, they cover the number and we get an awesome women's final.
That's what I'm rooting for. Not necessarily UConn to win, but for South Carolina to at least cover that number, and we get an awesome, compelling women's national championship game. So, yeah, I'll take Dawn Staley and the points. I don't think you can give a goat like Dawn Staley 6.5 points, but we will see on Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock Central. You ready to get back to your column?
I am. I'm literally the last person here on press row, and no doubt people are getting to work back there in the back area. Hey, how about this? I'm going to do some shouts right now, okay?
All right.
I'm going to shout out Dennis Dodd, who's done a great job. Isaac Trotter here on site. Kyle Boone back at home base. You're doing an awesome job. David Cobb, Adi Joseph, Trey Scott. We've had an army here that's doing a great job, and I can't wait for Monday night.
If you don't say Marcus Nelson,
hold on. I'm saying Marcus. Marcus is the king among over all of them. I was about to say it, but Marcus Nelson does an incredible job with us. I miss you in the buildings on nights like this. I know you got to do TV stuff, but man, it is something to be. It's just this huge cavernous space, and the way the roars cascade down from over there and on the floor level and up on the second level, it's something to experience. But I know you're making TV magic over there. And I'm going to stop rambling because I still have to file a column. I'd like to get some sleep before I get back here. We will have another show on Sunday. Don't ask me when we're recording it because I have no idea when this is getting done. But I know we have to do a show on Sunday. So at some point on Sunday, we will look ahead to Monday's title game.
Can't wait. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Terry Teagle's a legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That should be reflected in the comments. So please do that. We're going to talk to you again real soon on Sunday. Till then, take care.